Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Krown Countdown U, the playoff edition of Krown Countdown U. Let's get straight to it. Here are our panelists, Gord in Vancouver and Justin in Toronto. But now let's go to the highlight reel, and the most exciting game of the weekend happened in Ontario. Andrew?
So last week, our astute analyst Gord Randall called the Mac Laurier game a coin flip. Now, does Gord even know what the heck he's even talking about? Well, let's head to Waterloo to find out. Yeah, Gord spouts off a lot on this show, though, but this time he was correct. Let's pick this up in the second queue. Game tied at 3 apiece until this.
Throwing it across the middle. Curly Gittins got it. Stays on his feet. Gets away from Yoakum. He's in a foot race to the end zone. Touchdown, Laurier.
Curly Gittins Jr. from Michael Neville. 63 yards later, the Gittins, it's good. It's 10-3 Laurier. That lead grew to 14 after this Osinyi Ijinyuan Major capped a 5-play, 75-yard drive. Second half, McMaster continues to fight. Dan Peterman from Asher Hastings. That's right, Elaine. White Lotus, Yam Yam, Shanghai Sally. Come on, Jay Peterman. Seinfeld, anyone? Is this thing on? Mac would put another 7 on the board late in the game, but they'd come up short. The G-Hawks punched their ticket to the 8th Cup, winning in a coin flip over the Marauders. Over to London, Ontario, Western facing off with Carleton, the only team to beat the Purple Ponies this season. First series for the home side, Chris Merchant rolls out and hits Tom Marshall. The coach's son flips his way into the end zone, and the Stangs are on the board. Right before the quarter closed, Cedric Joseph caps a 9-play, 90-yard drive with this major. Get used to hearing that name, folks. Second Q, the Ravens show some fight. Jesse Mills to his favorite target, Nate Bahar. They followed that up with a field goal, and suddenly it's a 4-point game. Yeah, but not for long. Merchant shows off his arm, tossing the deep ball that Harry McMaster comes down with. Minutes later, it's Joseph once again, capping off a 4-play, 76-yard drive. His second tally of the game sees the Mustangs lead grow to 18. Let's head to the fourth Q now. Western up by 20. Joseph, already with 3 majors on the stat sheet, goes 23 yards to the house. The Purple Ponies are headed back to the 8th Cup final with a convincing win over Carleton.
I'm certainly happy. Yeah, it's a good football. They're a very good football team. You know, I like the way we control the line of scrimmage. You know, it's just sloppy. But you know what? You play good teams, sometimes that happens.
Regina hosting its first playoff game in, well, forever, playing host to the roller coaster T-Birds. UBC took the Rams by the horns early in this one. Second Q, up 6-3. The Birds block the punt. Colton Jalashley scoops it up and goes house. Visitors' lead grows to 10. Minutes later, they'd strike again. Michael O'Connor finds Marshall Cook for the major. Holy shnikes! But this Atlee Simon score right before the half cut the T-Birds' lead to just 10 at the Pilsner break. Second half, Regina puts 3 on the board, but then UBC goes to work like a doctor. They score 17 straight points in the span of 7 minutes, upping their lead to 26. Regina made a run in the final Q, scoring 21 points, but it was too little, too late for the Rams. Heartbreak City for the team that went from 0-8 to the top of the Canada West table in just one season. The T-Birds, just like their hometown Lions, put the final nail in the mosaic, giving the home team another loss. All right, let's head to Cowtown next. Dinos and Huskies. The Dogs scratch the scoreboard first. Tyler Chow caps a 10-play, 73-yard drive with his tutty from 2 yards out. But Adam Sinagra drives his squad 100 yards on just 9 plays, this being the capper of that drive.
To go with the ball just inside the 6. Sinagra stands, delivers, throws. Does Dallas both pull that in? Yes, he does. Touchdown. Keep that one on the highlight reel. Dallas both coming up big, deep in the end zone for 6.
Are you kidding me? Dallas both with possibly the catch of the year right there. That's a thing of beauty. It also brought the deficit down to just 1. From there on out, CGY put the game on blast. Before the half, Sinagra goes airborne to Austin Hartley for the major. Calgary scores 40 unanswered, putting down the Green Dogs by 30. Let's go to Quebec now. Rouge et Or hosting Concordia. The last time the Red Machine wasn't in a Dunsmore Cup final, 2002. That's right, just win, baby. Laval fans channeling the late Al Davis right there. First cue, the machine begins to roll. Hugo Richard shows off his dance moves. That led to a field goal, but the Stingers, they countered. They forced the leather loose and pounced on the biscuit. 2 plays later, Trenton Miller shows some fancy footwork of his own, but on the ensuing kickoff, Alexander Dufour starts from inside his own 10-yard line, looks for the far sideline, finds a seam and rip! Dufour with a 101-yard return for the major, and the tap kept running for Laval. Right before the quarter closed, Richard finds Mark Anthony Piven from 17 yards out. That capped a 4-play, 75-yard drive, growing the Rouge et Or lead to 17-8 after just the first cue. Fast forward to the second half, Laval now comfortably ahead by 15. And if it wasn't already done, this one put a fork in it. A perfectly placed sky ball from Richard to Piven. 72 yards later, it's in the fake red grass. Laval is off to its 14th straight Dunsmore final, taking the sting out of the Stings. In the other Dunsmore semi, the Battle of Montreal was not much of a fight. Despite making the postseason for the first time since 2012, the Redmen got outclassed by the back-to-back conference champs. The Carabins scored 10 in the first Q and followed it up with another 22 in the second, en route to a 42-0 victory. Atlantic Canada is where the real finishes up. Lovely Sackville, New Brunswick to be exact. Mount Allison puts the first touchdown on the board after Jacob Lux caps off a 6-play, 48-yard drive with his 4-yard major. Brandon Jennings hit back-to-back 3-bangers, both from 36 yards out, to give Acadia its first lead, but the Mounties would get majors from Chris Reed and another from Lux as they move on to the Lonely Bowl final with a 9-point win over Acadia. So here we have the first of the 4 conference finals games. Mount Allison looking to knock off the reigning champs, St. FX. Catch that one on TV1 in Atlantic Canada. In the queue, they say death and taxes are life's guarantees. Well, you can add the Carabins and the Rouge et Or facing off in the Dunsmore Cup final to that list. TVA Sport has that one for you. Laurier makes its first Yates Cup final since 2005. They will be facing the very same opponent that they faced back then, the Western Mustangs, in the 109th edition of the game that can be seen on CHCH with the homie, Justin Dunk, on the broadcast. See, kids, we're down with the lingo. We're hip here at KCU. And finally, it's the 80th anniversary of the Hardy Cup. Calgary playing host to the game for a 7th straight year, the program's 9th straight appearance. The Prehistorics welcome a familiar opponent in the reigning Hardy and Vanier Cup holders, the UBC Thunderbirds. You can watch the rematch of this one on Shaw TV, of course, called by our very own Jim Mullen.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
Hey, everyone that was screaming about parity, looky and see who is in the finals right across the country, with the exception of the Laurier Golden Hawks. It's the same old faces in the same old places. There were a few howls of social media anger a few weeks back when this show suggested that the parity claim across the U was overblown. With the exception of Mike Faulds and his work resulting in the Hawks' appearance, should we be surprised with these teams here, Justin?
Not necessarily, fellas. To start the year off, especially out east in the AUS, St. FX were the definite favorites. Of course, in Quebec, it was the usual suspects, Laval and Montreal. In Ontario, everyone knew Western was going to come back strong after losing the Eights on their home field. And then out west, you knew UBC and Calgary were going to be in the mix no matter what.
Yeah, and you know what really separates the average coaching staffs from the elite coaching staffs in this country seems to be the ability to step it up come November. You see some of these teams, happened to Montreal a couple years ago, happened to UBC this year, that depart from those top 2 seeds after the regular season. You see some new faces like Regina, but then at the end of the day, when it gets down to conference championship week, it seems to be the same faces in the same places, like you said, Jim. And I tweeted out after that UBC win that their season-long rope-a-dope continues. They seemed to do it last year, and that seems to be a function of the top coaching staffs in this country, Blake Nill's staff being the best example at this point in time.
Okay, our sidebar, with the exception of Regina, who drew just under 5,000 for their semifinal, attendance was abysmal for the semifinals across the country. Take a look at this. Montreal with a half-filled stadium, Laval with one of 3 seats empty. The numbers were rounded up in the OUA and the usual tumbleweeds in Calgary, but it was 18 degrees at kickoff. It was a spectacular day. I know this isn't for lack of effort, but how can the schools and the conferences mobilize and engage campuses and communities, or is this a function, in Quebec's case, of non-competitive and predictable games, Gord?
Well, in Quebec, I would say that it is a function of non-competitive games. Out west, however, and I'm looking at Calgary in specific, they need to get an on-campus facility in that town. It absolutely kills them. And having experienced different schools that have university stadiums right on campus that are specific to their teams, and most importantly, that are within walking distance for the vast majority of the student body, that is a huge boon to a program. And Calgary needs to get around sooner or later to getting out of McMahon Stadium, which they have never come even close to half filling in their time there, and get into a more appropriate venue that is more closely tied to the university itself, instead of being a hike for the students and tumbleweeds rolling through type of venue for the team itself.
That's a great point, Gordon. I'll shift to the OUA in the game that I was at, Laurier McMaster. That was a pretty good crowd there, no doubt. But I think that building could have even been more packed if the students were let in for free. We see it time and time again down in the NCAA where students get in for nothing. And what does that do? It gets them seeing the product into the atmosphere and makes them want to come back when they're alumni, when they are actually making money to spend it on campus.
And what can't be underestimated here is the value of exposure. It's marketing 101. You have to believe that you have a good product, and then if people experience your product, and that includes the game itself as well as the game day atmosphere, that it's going to enhance that product and lead to further sales. It's not like the only way that you can make money off of people is from tickets off the top. There are ways to make back that revenue, concessions, all those kinds of things, but what cannot be calculated is the intangible value of atmosphere and experience, and that's what you want to cultivate at a university. This is not a business venture primarily and solely, it's other things as well.
Exactly, Gordon. If you're a student, for example, let's say the Yates Cup this weekend, would you rather pay, $20 or $30, go and watch it, and then have to pay for your drinks and all that encompasses, or stay at home, drink for free, and watch it on TV? Let's get it encouraged to have the kids out at the game, and as you said, get that exposure to them.
Page 2 now. Is it time that the U, or Football Canada, brought in a targeting rule in terms of helmet-to-helmet contact? We saw helmet-to-helmet hits called early in some parts of the country, but that faded as the season went along. Flash forward to the semifinal in Calgary, where Kyle Siemens is targeted right here with the crown of a helmet straight to the chin. No call on this, but even worse, it's suspected that the quarterback is now dealing with a concussion. Is making a clear rule change, Gord, the only way to move this sport forward?
Making a clear rule change will help, but it's not going to matter unless the referees that referee in the CIS are all trained in the same place by the same people and expect the same levels of conduct and the same standards on the field. Because as we saw in the Canada West, there are vastly different standards on all sorts of penalties, and I'm not targeting specific regions saying that they're unsafe or whatever, but there are vastly different standards on all sorts of penalties depending on what given market you are playing in on a given Saturday. And that has to change if you are going to focus on implementing a rule like this, because you can put it in at the university level, at the U Sport level, but some staffs are going to officiate it really tight, some are going to let it go. It's going to be all over the map, and you have to regulate that first before you can talk about changing rules to manage this, Jim.
Preach, and keep preaching, Gord, because first of all, there needs to be a targeting penalty. That is far behind its time. And going back to some of the calls, especially that I saw in the Laurier McMaster game, it feels like the officials want to affect the game. That is not your job as an official. Your job is to call a penalty when you see it. There are too many flags being thrown, especially away from the play, that bring back exciting plays. It has to stop.
And now let's go to our rumor mill. And Justin, will Danny Maciocia be the head coach of the Montreal Carabins next year, or maybe the Montreal Alouettes? What's your take on this?
I think he'll be in Montreal. If I had a shiny nickel and I was going to the betting window, I would put it on Danny Maciocia as the next general manager for the Montreal Alouettes. It seems like it's close to all but a done deal. Danny Maciocia has been asked about it and hasn't denied it, which I think speaks volumes.
I agree that it seems like Danny Maciocia, the way he's acting publicly, it almost feels like he has one foot out the door. At the very least, he's looking for that next job. And we thought when he first came to the University of Montreal that he was doing so with an eye back to the CFL. Now, he stayed there longer than we thought. His tenure has been outstanding and huge for that school. But it was always felt like he was waiting for a chance to get back to the CFL. And from the Alouettes side, it makes a lot of sense. He's bilingual. You saw an instant boost at the gates as soon as bilingual Jacques Chapdelaine was the head coach there. And speaking of Jacques Chapdelaine, however, if Danny Maciocia doesn't get that job in the CFL, it's got to be Jacques Chapdelaine. But from the U to M perspective, you got to wait and see what happens. You can't match the means of the Alouettes, so it's basically up to their discretion as to whether you get to keep your head coach or not.
Guys, the most interesting thing about all of this is what will it do to the University of Montreal? Danny Maciocia really revived that program and made them into a power that could topple Laval time and time again, and that was never possible before he got there. So maybe Maciocia leaving makes Laval the king of the roost there in the RSEQ yet again.
Now it's time for our first full playoff edition of Weekend Warriors. And one of the great things about Weekend Warriors is that we can make calls based on drama and impact rather than pure numbers alone. Calgary receiver Dallas Both had impact in the Dinos' domination of Saskatchewan. Opening drive, he provided Adam Sinagra a huge confidence boost when the rookie quarterback tested the middle and hung on after a hellacious hit. Then, with the Dinos down 8-0, Both makes a catch that would stand up in any league or conference's top 10, which gave Calgary a shot of momentum, which didn't stop until the final whistle.
Well, a little insider info for me. The offensive line union contacted me a couple weeks ago. So for the second week in a row, my first Weekend Warriors are an offensive line unit. This week it's the Western Mustangs, who piled up 598 yards of offense and 51 points in that romp over Carleton on the weekend, and that included well over 300 yards on the ground. They had three guys almost hit 100 yards. They had Chris Merchant run for 97. He was the almost. They had Cedric Joseph run for 107 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground. And Alex Taylor, the usual suspect, ran for 109 yards. When you can dominate that much in the trenches and on the ground, despite who's running the ball, you're having a massive day. So a shout out to that offensive line. Sean Jamieson, Gregoire Bouchard, Matt Van Pret, Matt Betancourt, and David Brown. Great job, big boys.
I'll go to Ontario, guys, in the game that I called with the venerable Mark Lee on CHCH. By the way, you can catch the Yates Cup on CHCH at 1 p.m. Saturday. Kwaku Boateng was a force to be reckoned with for the Laurier Golden Hawks. Their defensive lineman had a big day, 4 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 1 knockdown as well. But what he brings to the table, maybe most importantly, is the attention he draws from opposing offensive lines that allows others on the D-line to get one-on-one matchups.
Let's go to a game that was never in doubt in Montreal, but it was still a great performance defensively by Alex Cromer-Imon of the Carabins in their blanking of McGill. A forced fumble and 2 interceptions is a great game in any circumstance, but it also speaks to team numbers. Monsieur ABC became the 5th defensive player this year on the Carbs to register 2 interceptions.
All the way out to the AUS for Mount Allison running back Chris Reed, who had a massive day. 34 carries for 209 yards and 1 touchdown in a big-time win over Acadia to get to their 4th straight Loney Bowl as they try to avenge a loss to St. FX last year.
Yeah, that Acadia rush defense. I'm going with my second Weekend Warrior as Michael O'Connor, the UBC quarterback. Now, the numbers look good for him, 29 for 40 for 73%, 397 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. But the reason I'm picking O'Connor is the throw that he makes on their last touchdown of the afternoon. They're from about 11, 12 yards out. He drops back, gets a free blitzer up the gut, and as he's getting hit in the midsection, executes a perfect jumping touch throw where the ball lands just inside the corner of the end zone where only David Mann, his receiver, can catch it. This is a phenomenal professional caliber throw from O'Connor and a gutsy one at that. Fantastic job by Michael O'Connor.
Coming up, it's the most special version yet of X's and Olsen.
Krown Countdown U is supported by the Guelph Griffins.
Agile, mobile, hostile.
CEGEP semifinals. Notre Dame de Foix is moving on to the championship game, defeating Vanier College 30-24. Notre Dame shot out to a 24 halftime lead, but Vanier rallied, but it wasn't enough as ND moves on. In the other semifinal, Andre Grasset over Champlain College 34-25. So the grand finale is set. Notre Dame and Andre Grasset for the D1 championship this weekend. Off to Spud Island, Charlottetown PEI, the AFL championship. Holland College going for the 4th straight Moosehead Cup, and the undefeated Dalhousie Tigers. 7 turnovers will not win you a championship, and that's what the Hurricanes did. A big ouch to that. Tigers quarterback Nick Hunsley leads Dal to the championship with a 29-11 domination of Holland College. It is time to jump to the AUS Dal. The Hamilton Hurricanes are the Ontario Football Conference champions, clobbering the 2-time champs, the Windsor AKO Fratman, 52-21 at Tim Hortons Field in the Hammer. Thankfully, the OFC will go back to the CJFL age rules governing the PFC and the BCFC next year, and they will also play for the Canadian Bowl. You still want to take notes? Olson's on here talking about special teams.
This week it's playoff time, and we're going to take a look at the role that special teams could play in a team going to the finals or going home. Last week, both UBC and the Dinos had special teams touchdowns that flipped the course of the game. We're going to take a look at 2 weeks ago when they played each other and some of the opportunities that were left on the field. Let's go to the first clip. 2 weeks ago, UBC blocked a kick. It didn't have the monumental impact that it did this past week, but you're going to see some of the same principles. Simple man protection scheme. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 guys to a side. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to this side. That takes both of these blockers to the wide side of the field, and you end up having an outnumbered scenario to the weak side of the formation. Let's roll this clip forward a little bit, and we'll pause it and we'll take a look. Yeah, if UBC's in a rush posture, let's pause it right there. The center is never in the blocking scheme in a punt scenario. You're going to have inside rusher and an outside rusher who are free here, and there's only one up back to be able to pick up both defenders. What should happen is this interior up back should come and pick up the interior rusher, and the outside guy should pick up the outside rusher. They miss it, inside man is free, and you end up having a block at the block point. Let's roll this clip forward. Right there, comes free, block inside. Not a monumental play in this game. 3-yard punt as opposed to a touchdown, which UBC got this following week. But it was a huge momentum shift, and it's something that could play a factor in the Hardy Cup. Let's take a look at the last play here, which is a missed field goal that could win a game, I think, this week in the Hardy Cup. Here you go. Calgary's lining up to kick a game-winning field goal. It's a long kick. Anytime you have a long kick, there's a potential for a return. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 players on outside leverage here. UBC is obviously thinking about return potential here on this missed field goal. Let's roll it forward just a little bit and you'll see what ends up happening. Long kick here for the Dinos. They have their long field goal personnel in the game, which is huge here. Let's pause it right here. You're going to see the return form. And this field goal, you have it to the field. He's going to try to get down the sidelines here. You have one person who's going to end up widening that single outside contained defender. Everyone else is going to try to create a wall here. All right, and there's going to be a looper here that's going to be responsible for the safety or the kicker to spring him for 6 points. Let's take a look here and see what happens. Pinto's a dangerous returner. He gets outside, splits those 2 defenders, and he's almost off to the races. Ends up being a 40-yard return. Was a huge play in the game. They could have gone from losing the game on the field goal to winning it on the return. And this week in the Hardy Cup, there are 2 young kickers who have been super inconsistent throughout the entirety of the season. I think that could be the difference in the game. We'll wait and see.
Okay, time for Triple W2K, or what we want to know. And what we want to know is which one of the two quarterback battles will be the most compelling to watch in the conference finals. Is it Montreal's Sam Krown versus Laval's Hugo Richard, or Calgary's Adam Sinagra versus Michael O'Connor? Let's go to the quarterback first for this.
This is easy for me, fellas. I don't want to watch checkdowns, so we're going out west to Michael O'Connor and Adam Sinagra. This is an interesting matchup for a number of reasons. Obviously, O'Connor can make professional-type throws, and we see Sinagra, who's come in for an injured Jimmy Underdahl, get the Dinos to this point. Can he help them avenge a defeat to UBC last year? That'll be interesting.
Well, it's got to be Krown versus Richard. The first guy to one touchdown pass wins. Now, those guys are most closely matched, but what's really compelling about the O'Connor versus Sinagra matchup is that this is a matchup that's set up to be a duel for years to come, as we have at least 3 more years of these two guys potentially going at it for UBC and Calgary at the helm, and this is just chapter 1 of what could be an epic battle between those two throughout their careers.
On this show, we respond to whining and complaining on social media in both official languages, by the way. I'm not really sure why, but Triple W2K, have we been ignoring the excellence in the RSEQ this year, and why, if we have?
Well, Canada is a democracy after all, Jim, but 2 reasons why we may be perceived as ignoring the excellence in the RSEQ this year. And the first one for me, the primary one, is that it's not really an exciting brand of football. When the 2 top teams in the conference play at it, nobody ever breaks 20 points. And sorry, call me a spoiled millennial, but that's not a brand of football that can entertain me for 3.5 hours at a time, so I don't generally watch it. The other thing that gets in the way of the RSEQ, like if people who are supporting these teams can't be bothered to go out unless it's Laval versus Montreal, why the heck should we pay attention? You can snooze through the entire season until the Dunsmore Cup, because that's all that's really going to matter in this conference.
Let me correct you for a sec. They've played twice this year, 24-21, 22-19. So they got into the 20s, Gord, just barely, but they were there. Now, I'm with you. The brand of football might not speak to the louder audience, but even though I was an offensive guy and a quarterback, I like the points to be hard-earned. They're not quite like that out in the Canada West, especially this year, but the difference is there needs to be a little more entertainment value in the queue.
Triple W2K, what road team has the best chance? Justin.
It has to be UBC. It seems like they're getting this magical run, this concoction going. Again, they used the regular season just to figure out where everyone should slot in for this playoff run.
For me, I got to go back to Quebec, because I did say there was one exciting game in the Quebec Conference every year, and it's Montreal Laval in the Dunsmore Cup. And this one, like the game I talked about last week, is a complete coin flip. So I will be watching that one closely, despite my previous point about the queue.
And for me, because they went in both those directions, I'm going with Laurier. Hey, we're going to have some web extras coming up, so look online for them. But for now, let's get out to the game.